In a quaint, tree-lined neighborhood where picket fences defined boundaries and manicured lawns showcased pride, I stood as an unexpected figure amidst the ordinary. As a Supreme Court justice, my life was often filled with complex legal arguments and heavy deliberations. Yet, in this serene setting, I found refuge in the simplicity of family ties. My younger sister, Emma, had carved out a life here, nurturing her modest home with love and attention. We shared a bond that transcended our contrasting worlds. She was a free spirit while I navigated the rigid corridors of power and law. Growing up together, we spent countless summer days playing in the very yard she now tended with care. The laughter echoed in my mind as I reminisced about our childhood adventures, building forts from old sheets and racing each other on bicycles down the quiet streets. Emma's home was more than just bricks and mortar. It was a sanctuary filled with memories of our late parents and dreams for the future. She had poured her heart into renovations, transforming it into a cozy haven despite financial setbacks that threatened her peace. However, the idyllic charm of our neighborhood came at a cost, a strict homeowners association that enforced its rules with an iron fist. As I watched my sister navigate the increasing demands of the HOA, I felt an unsettling tension brewing beneath the surface. It seemed like a picturesque community on the outside but was marred by rigid regulations that suffocated individuality. Little did Emma know that her life was about to collide dramatically with my own world of justice, and that I would be thrust into a battle to protect what mattered most to us both. Emma's home was more than just a physical structure, it was the embodiment of our family's legacy. Nestled at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac, the modest two-story house had always beckoned with its warm, inviting facade. Built by our parents, it represented years of love and sacrifice. After their passing, it became a sanctuary for Emma, filled with memories that echoed through its walls, laughter during family gatherings, quiet evenings spent reading in the living room, and dreams shared under the stars on the back porch. Despite the sentimental value, life had not been kind to Emma financially. A series of setbacks, from unexpected medical bills to job instability, had put immense pressure on her. Yet, she never let these challenges overshadow her determination to make the house a home. With each passing year, Emma took on renovations herself, tackling everything from peeling paint to outdated fixtures. She relied on creativity and resourcefulness, often scavenging local flea markets and thrift stores for unique finds that would breathe new life into her sanctuary. Her efforts paid off, the once worn interiors transformed into a vibrant space reflecting her personality. Colorful plants adorned every window sill, and handmade decorations dotted the walls, telling stories of her journey and resilience. However, this vibrant life came under threat from the HOA, whose regulations stifled her creative spirit. They scrutinized every detail of her renovations under the guise of maintaining community standards. As I watched Emma pour her heart into sustaining this cherished home, I felt a growing sense of urgency. The love she had cultivated within those walls was palpable, but it seemed fragile against the looming threats of bureaucratic control. It was clear to me that safeguarding her home was about more than just property rights, it was about preserving our family's memory and her right to create a life filled with joy amidst adversity. In the heart of this seemingly idyllic neighborhood loomed a figure feared by many, Margaret Finn, affectionately dubbed HOA Karen. With a sharp tongue and an even sharper eye for rule enforcement, she embodied the overzealous nature of some homeowners association members. Dressed in crisp blouses and accompanied by her ever-present clipboard, she was known for her relentless vigilance in regulating every aspect of community life, from lawn aesthetics to the color of front doors. Margaret had turned her passion for order into a personal crusade, often armed with an arsenal of HOA guidelines ready to impose on anyone who dared to deviate from her vision of conformity. Her disdain for anything perceived as unconventional or untidy was palpable, and her presence alone made neighbors think twice about their choices, from garden gnomes to holiday decorations. Emma, with her colorful flower beds and eclectic decor, had become a prime target in Margaret's sights. At first, it had been minor complaints, a notice about weeds creeping up along the pathway, a warning concerning the bright orange paint on Emma's front door that clashed with the neighborhood's color scheme. But as Emma resisted being cowed by Margaret's persistent criticisms, the tension escalated dramatically. Margaret was not one to back down easily, she thrived on control and authority. The battle lines were drawn as she sought to impose stricter regulations, employing every tactic at her disposal to quash any semblance of creativity or individuality. As I observed this unfolding conflict from a distance, I couldn't help but feel a mix of anger and concern. My sister's vibrant spirit was clashing head-on with an antagonist determined to suffocate it under layers of bureaucracy. Margaret would soon discover that she was up against more than just a stubborn homeowner, she was about to face the full weight of justice's gavel, and my unwavering determination to protect my sister's home. As the weeks passed, the tensions between Emma and the Homeowners Association escalated into a full-blown conflict. What began as minor complaints soon ballooned into an obsessive scrutiny of her every choice. One afternoon, Margaret knocked on Emma's door with a scowl, clutching her clipboard as if it were a badge of honor. She declared that Emma's newly painted mailbox, bright teal with hand-painted sunflowers, was in direct violation of the HOA's muted color palette mandate. Teal is not an approved color for mailboxes, Margaret insisted, her tone dripping with authority. Emma's eyes widened in disbelief, fought back a laugh, and explained that it was a small expression of creativity in her otherwise constrained world. Yet, to Margaret, it posed a threat to the neighborhood's facade of uniformity. Weeks later, another notice arrived. This time it cited the unsightly appearance of Emma's garden gnomes, which had begun to accumulate in her front yard. They were whimsical and cheerful, starkly contrasting with the monotonous decor favored by the HOA, but to Margaret, they were an offense against the community's aesthetic standards. "You need to remove them immediately," she ordered, as though the very existence of those gnomes could topple the delicate balance of neighborhood harmony. With each notification, Emma felt her creative spirit stifled further. Her colorful flower beds and vibrant decorations became casualties of Margaret's unwavering reign. Neighbors whispered about the absurdity of the situation, some even expressed solidarity with Emma but feared the repercussions from the HOA. As my sister battled these petty violations, I saw the depths of Margaret's obsession with control, revealing how arbitrary and limiting HOA rules could be. This needless war over minor violations only fueled my determination to protect not just Emma's home, but her right to express herself within its cherished confines. As I prepared to visit Emma one fateful afternoon, a sense of unease washed over me. The escalating conflict with the HOA had taken a toll on her, but nothing could have prepared me for the shocking news that awaited. Arriving at her home, I found Emma pacing in her living room, her face ashen and eyes wide with disbelief. "The HOA sent me a notice today," she stammered, clutching a wrinkled piece of paper. "They've decided to bulldoze my house." My heart sank as I processed her words, struggling to comprehend the gravity of the situation. The document outlined dubious claims of code violations, suggesting that her home posed a danger to the community, a perspective that seemed utterly preposterous given its well-kept condition. I felt an overwhelming surge of anger and protectiveness for my sister. How could they justify this cruel decision? Emma's sanctuary was not just a residence, it was filled with memories of our childhood, a legacy from our parents, and a testament to her resilience against adversity. The thought of it being reduced to rubble was devastating. The emotional turmoil etched across Emma's face was palpable. She had poured her heart into that home, transforming it into a reflection of who she was while honoring our family's history. Now, her dreams were under siege by an unyielding bureaucracy that valued conformity over individuality. As she sank onto the couch, tears streaming down her cheeks, I vowed to take action. This was more than just an attack on her home, it was an affront to everything we held dear. I realized that I needed to step into the fray, not just as her brother but as a Supreme Court justice willing to fight against the absurdity and injustice of this situation. The battle for her home had begun, and I would not let it end without a fight. As I sat there, my mind racing with disbelief and fury, a sense of duty surged within me. The weight of my title as a Supreme Court justice felt heavier than ever. It was not just a role defined by legal precedents and courtroom decorum but also one grounded in family responsibility. How could I allow this injustice to happen to my sister, the one person who had fought so fiercely to claim her space in the world? Emma had always been more than just my sibling. She was a beacon of resilience and creativity. Watching her pour her heart into that home, transforming it into a refuge filled with love and memories, made it painfully clear that I had to act. It wasn't just about legalities, it was about protecting the essence of who she was and what our family's legacy meant. I could envision the laughter we shared in that space, the late-night talks on the porch, and the warmth that radiated from those walls. The thought of it all being reduced to rubble because of petty HOA rules ignited a fire in me. I realized that this wasn't merely a personal battle, it was emblematic of a larger struggle against conformity and oppression. The HOA's decision represented an affront to individuality, a concept I had fought for throughout my career. As I took a deep breath, resolve filled my chest. I would utilize every resource at my disposal to take on Margaret and the HOA. This fight was no longer just about Emma's home, it was about standing up for everyone who felt stifled by oppressive regulations. With determination coursing through me, I envisioned the courtroom's atmosphere, my arguments poised to challenge not only the legitimacy of the HOA's actions but their very right to dictate how people should live. It was time for justice, not just for my sister but for all who dared to defy the mundane confines of conformity. Emma deserved that fight, and so did countless others like her. As I prepared for the impending legal battle against the Homeowners Association, I delved into the complexities of HOA authority and property rights. The situation with Emma was fraught with nuances that required careful consideration of legal precedents. Homeowners associations often operate under a set of governing documents that grant them significant power over community affairs, but there are limits to that authority. One landmark case that weighed heavily on my mind was Shelley v. Kramer, which established that racially restrictive covenants could not be enforced by state action, highlighting that not all regulations imposed by HOAs are inviolable. This precedent showcased the importance of balancing individual rights with community standards. I needed to frame our challenge within the context of property rights and individual freedoms, arguing that Emma's home represented more than just physical property, it was a legacy filled with familial memories. I also considered other cases where courts had ruled against HOA actions, particularly those involving excessive enforcement of rules perceived as arbitrary or capricious. The case of Higgins v. Riggins came to mind, where an HOA's attempt to impose fines on homeowners for slight infractions was deemed unreasonable, resulting in court intervention. Armed with these precedents, I envisioned our argument. We would contend that the HOA's decision to bulldoze Emma's home was not only an overreach of its authority but also an infringement upon her property rights and personal expression. It would be crucial to demonstrate how the enforcement of such draconian measures undermined the very purpose of community living, where individuality can coexist alongside collective harmony. With my thoughts crystallizing into a strategic plan, I felt a surge of determination. This wasn't just about defending my sister, it was about challenging a system that allowed individuals like Margaret to wield power in ways that could devastate lives. I would stand firm in my belief that justice must prevail, not only for Emma but for every homeowner facing the tyranny of conformity imposed by their own communities. Fueled by a sense of duty and justice, I began to devise a strategic plan that would confront both the HOA's actions and the rigid authority wielded by Margaret Finn. My legal expertise was extensive, but this situation called for a multifaceted approach as it was not only about winning a case, it was about protecting my sister's home and challenging a system that allowed such tyranny to flourish. First, I gathered evidence to meticulously document every violation claimed by the HOA. I reached out to neighbors who had also felt the sting of Margaret's harsh regulations, encouraging them to share their experiences. As I compiled testimonials, photographs of Emma's well-kept home, and records of previous HOA infractions that had gone unchallenged, I began to build the framework for our case. It became abundantly clear that Margaret's definition of compliance was flexible at best, often targeting those who dared to embrace creativity or individuality. Next, I crafted an argument that emphasized the importance of individual rights within community living. I planned to frame the case not just around Emma's home, but as a broader fight for homeowners across the nation who felt stifled by similar authoritative figures in their neighborhoods. This perspective would resonate beyond personal ties, it would touch upon universal themes of freedom and self-expression. Additionally, I sought out legal allies, reaching out to colleagues who shared my disdain for the overreach displayed by HOAs. Their insights and support could prove invaluable in crafting a compelling strategy. Together, we would analyze similar cases where homeowners triumphed against oppressive regulations and build upon those victories. Motivated by the weight of responsibility I felt toward Emma and fellow residents like her, I envisioned the courtroom scenes where justice could unfold. Armed with facts, testimonials, and unwavering determination, we would challenge not only the legitimacy of Margaret's actions but also inspire change in how HOAs operated across the country. This fight became not just my sister's battle, it was emblematic of a movement against conformity, a stand for every homeowner seeking to protect their right to a true sense of home. On the day of the trial, the courtroom hummed with tension and anticipation. As I stood before the assembled audience, friends, neighbors, and a few curious onlookers, my heart swelled with determination. This was more than just a legal battle, it was a crucial turning point in all our lives, a chance to confront an oppressive authority that had suffocated too many under the guise of maintaining order. The proceedings began with Margaret Finn making her entrance, exuding a confidence that masked the dubious nature of her claims. My team of legal allies and I had prepared thoroughly, ready to dismantle her narrative piece by piece. We called forth our first witness, Mrs. Thompson, an elderly neighbor who had also felt the brunt of Margaret's harsh regulations. With trembling hands but a steady voice, she recounted her own experiences of intimidation and scrutiny over trivial matters. The courtroom listened intently as she described how the HOA's actions had chipped away at her peace of mind. Next came our expert witness, a renowned urban planner who discussed the importance of community values and individual rights in residential living. His testimony underscored how moderate personal expression enriched the fabric of any neighborhood rather than detracted from it. The glances exchanged among jurors indicated that this perspective resonated with them. As my turn approached, I steeled myself for my argument, envisioning its impact. I emphasized how Emma's home was not merely property, it was a testament to creativity and familial love that resonated with everyone present. I argued that bulldozing it contradicted the values we all sought in community life, growth, individuality, and respect for one another. Public sentiment surrounding the HOA was shifting, many shared Emma's plight and recognized their own struggles against similar authoritarian figures. The narrative I presented painted not just a picture of injustice but a call to arms for others to stand firm against conformity. The courtroom buzzed with an energy that breathed life into our cause, a movement burgeoning just beneath the surface. In that moment, I knew we were forging something monumental, challenging the status quo and igniting hope for all homeowners forced to navigate the murky waters of homeowner associations. As the trial progressed, tension crackled in the air, and an unexpected twist emerged that would shake the foundations of the case. Just as I finished presenting compelling testimonies and evidence, Margaret Finn took the stand to defend the HOA's actions. Her confident demeanor began to falter when she was faced with pointed questions regarding the motives behind the decision to bulldoze Emma's home. Under cross-examination, it became clear that Margaret had been selective about enforcing regulations, her decisions often aligned with personal biases rather than objective standards. When I introduced evidence gathered from neighbors, detailed accounts of how certain members of the HOA had received leniency for their own violations, the courtroom erupted in murmurs. This inconsistency painted a larger picture of discrimination that undermined the integrity of the HOA. In a dramatic turn, one neighbor, a former board member, suddenly stepped forward to testify, revealing internal communications that suggested collusion among HOA members to unfairly target homes that did not fit their narrow definition of desirability. Her testimony echoed through the courtroom like thunder, exposing Margaret's authority as a facade masking deeper issues of elitism and control. With this revelation, my heart raced. I could almost see the tides turning in our favor. The audience was riveted as it became apparent that we weren't just fighting for Emma's home anymore, we were unveiling systemic issues affecting many residents within the community. The jurors leaned forward, and I could see their eyes reflecting a new understanding of what was at stake. As Margaret sputtered under this newfound scrutiny, I seized my opportunity to reinforce our central argument. This case was about more than property rights, it was about standing up against an oppressive system that threatened individuality and freedom. The courtroom buzzed with renewed energy as whispers of shared experiences resonated among attendees. This fight was no longer just Emma's, it symbolized a movement towards justice for countless others constrained by similarly tyrannical governing bodies. As the courtroom awaited the judge's ruling, a palpable tension filled the air. Emma sat beside me, her fingers intertwined with mine, both of us holding our breath in anticipation of a decision that would shape not only her future but also set a precedent for homeowners across the nation. The arguments had been made, and public sentiment had shifted dramatically. Now, it was time for justice to unfold. After what felt like an eternity, the judge entered and took his seat. I could see the weight of responsibility on his shoulders as he prepared to deliver his verdict. When he finally spoke, his voice resonated with authority and clarity. He acknowledged the HOA's right to enforce community standards but emphasized that such power was not absolute. The actions taken by the Homeowners Association against Ms. Emma Hart, he stated firmly, were found to be an overreach that infringed upon her property rights and individual freedoms. A wave of relief washed over me as the judge ruled in our favor, declaring that the HOA's decision to bulldoze Emma's home was unjustified and discriminatory. The courtroom erupted with emotion, tears streamed down Emma's face as she grasped what this victory meant, not just for her, but for everyone who had felt powerless against similar oppressive forces. The ruling set a critical precedent, reinforcing that homeowners are entitled to express their individuality without fear of arbitrary enforcement by HOAs. As I looked at my sister, I saw hope rekindled not only in her eyes but also in those of our neighbors who had gathered in support throughout this ordeal. This resounding victory heralded change. It sparked conversations throughout communities grappling with similar issues. We had challenged the status quo and emerged victorious, igniting a movement that would empower homeowners everywhere to stand firm against unjust regulations. In that moment of triumph, I understood that this fight had transcended personal ties, it had become a collective stand for justice and individuality in every neighborhood across the country. In the aftermath of the ruling, a deep sense of gratitude and reflection enveloped me as I sat beside Emma, watching her smile gradually return. The triumph over the Homeowners Association had fortified our bond, a testament to resilience through adversity. We had faced an oppressive force together, and that shared experience had not only reinforced our familial connection but also reshaped our understanding of what it meant to fight for one's home. As we stepped outside the courthouse, the atmosphere crackled with renewed energy. Supporters who had gathered during the trial surrounded us, many expressing their own struggles against similar oppressive HOA actions. Their gratitude echoed in heartfelt words, illustrating how our fight had resonated beyond personal ties. It was evident that public perception was shifting. Once feared figures like Margaret Finn were now viewed with skepticism and resentment, as more residents began to question the legitimacy of their authority. In conversations around the community, neighbors openly discussed forming coalitions to challenge their own HOAs, sharing stories of intimidation that had long gone unspoken. Emma's victory had ignited a fire of empowerment. Individuals were inspired to reclaim their rights and assert their individuality within their neighborhoods. The courtroom drama was no longer just a legal battle, it had become a catalyst for change across the community. I realized then that this experience was profoundly transformative, not just for Emma and me, but for countless others who felt marginalized by strict regulations. Our legal victory became both a rallying cry and a symbol of hope. We were now part of a larger movement advocating for justice and individuality, an opportunity for homeowners everywhere to unite against tyranny disguised as community governance. With pride swelling in my heart, I recognized that Emma's home was no longer simply a house filled with cherished memories, it represented the triumph of personal freedom over conformity. From that day forward, we would continue standing up for those sidelined by overreaching HOAs, knowing full well that our struggle was more than just an isolated incident, it was a pivotal chapter in the ongoing narrative of community and individuality. As I stood with Emma, reflecting on the journey that had brought us to this moment, I couldn't help but feel that we had learned invaluable lessons about justice, community involvement, and the importance of standing up against tyranny in seemingly mundane scenarios. Our experience showed that battles often begin in quiet corners of neighborhoods, where the pervasive influence of homeowners associations can stifle individuality and creativity. The victory we achieved was not just legal, it was deeply personal. It underscored how critical it is for individuals to challenge injustices, no matter how small they may seem at first. By taking a stand against the oppressive practices of the HOA, we had not only saved Emma's home but also empowered countless others who felt marginalized and voiceless. The ripple effect of our fight was apparent as neighbors began expressing their own frustrations and advocating for their rights. This case served as a reminder that justice is not merely a concept confined to courtrooms, it thrives in communities where people are willing to engage with one another and raise their voices. We learned that it requires resilience to confront authority, especially when faced with bureaucratic structures that thrive on conformity. As we looked out over our neighborhood, I felt a renewed sense of hope. The landscape was more than just houses, it was a tapestry woven from unique stories and diverse identities. This experience challenged us all to recognize the potential for change within our own communities. Together, we could foster an environment where individuality is celebrated rather than suppressed, paving the way for future generations. In closing, our fight against the HOA taught us that while adversity can strain familial bonds, it can also strengthen them. We emerged not just as siblings fighting for a home but as champions of justice, the kind that calls upon each of us to stand firm against complacency and advocate for what is right in our lives and communities.